Sure.
It's just a question generated just from your discussion.
Sure.
What are the churches like that you are partnering with in terms of size or worship or how far people may travel for a meeting? Or can you talk
Okay.
about that?
African worship is very exciting. It's the singing, you've never heard anything like it. Did you find that when did you?
We did, but we were more at a Seventh-day Adventist wedding.
That's right.
Which we had trouble remembering what day of the week it was anyway.
Yeah,
So by the
yeah.
time we got to the wedding, that was a little extraordinary, but it was like Zambian plus.
Yeah, yeah.
So it was quite a production.
The singing is a cappella.
Right.
It's in parts. We like to say it's aerobic, the women, because when they do the movements, it's the whole body. It's not just like little movements like we did growing up. Passionate. When one church in Harare, Zimbabwe, the capital, has 10 choirs. And so when the pastor says, this choir, he'll say one number, because they'll go on and on all day if you let them. They will meet a couple of times a week to practice. There's that kind of commitment. Churches we're fond of saying African churches are pregnant because almost every church will have prayer houses. And these are like congregations that are incubating. So a prayer house might only be 25 people. And when it gets larger and more self-sufficient, then it becomes a congregation. And if there is a pastor available, one would be assigned. But often a pastor will have a congregation and 3, 4, 5 prayer houses that he or she is responsible for. And the prayer houses are also often because of transportation. They're closer to wherever. When you start worship, the sanctuary might only have a few people. And by the time you finish, it's full because people just come if they're going on minibuses, which is the primary means of transportation. There's no schedule. It's when they're full, they move. Or they just are busy doing something else and they come. Something that's very important are the men and women's guilds. And, when you see pictures here, you'll see women in white hats and white blouses and black skirts. And to be a member of the Women's Guild, you go through at least a year of training. And then there's a special ceremony called a blousing ceremony. And you've made your uniform or had it made. It's long sleeve, has buttons and a sash. And that goes, you put it on. And I was involved in one of those, which was very nice. But it's a real commitment. The guilds visit. Again, back in the church where my husband's serving in suburban Washington, one of our Togolese members is not feeling well, and he told the Cameroonian women they need to go visit him. And that's a very African thing to do. The services are at least a couple hours, and the sermon is a half an hour. My husband had to learn to preach American length. And the offering is very different. You don't pass a basket. People come up to give the offering. And everybody gives. And often there's a couple of baskets. There's the offering basket, and there's the building fund. Now, the other thing the offering is there are sections, depending on where you live. So there's section 1, section 2, section 3. So someone will stand up and say, section 1, and everybody from section 1 will come up and give their offering. And then section 2. And at the end of the service, they have counted the money, and they will announce how much they got. And you're like, why would they do that? It's so you know how many cookies are in the cookie jar. There's an accountability. And they realize more and more they have to be accountable. Doesn't mean that sometimes things are taken that shouldn't be, but the children are in worship. They usually sit on reed mats in the front. If they have to get up and go to the bathroom, they go and they come back. And they might come back with some cheese curls or something, but on the whole, they just sit there quietly. Women nurse their babies. It's natural. Sunday is church. You don't have to worry about going off to a soccer game or whatever. Although in Harare, the big soccer stadium was right outside of one of the Presbyterian churches. Yeah. So you had to be sure that you were done church before because you wouldn't be able to hear yourself think.